let's turn to the big question. Who's gonna win? My honest answer? I really don't know. This could go either way. This is the story of the time I ran for JCR President. You might not know what that is yet, but don't worry, this will be a lot easier to explain if I rewind a bit. Hello everybody, my name is Sam and this is Oxcentric. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a good friend at my college about his plans to run for treasurer in the upcoming JCR elections, and it got me thinking, what if I ran for JCR President? I imagine you probably have several questions, which I'm going to try and answer now. First off, let's establish what a JCR actually is. JCR stands for Junior Common Room. In the most general sense, the JCR is like a students' union for each Oxford college. It votes on motions, it allocates funding, and it elects people to committee roles. However, to make matters more confusing, most colleges also have a literal Junior Common Room for undergraduate students to use for socialising and more. And finally, to top it all off, all the undergraduate members of a college are referred to as members of the JCR. That is needlessly complicated, but there we go. Next, what does the president actually do? The JCR president acts as the main representative of the college's undergraduate student body, often interfacing with college administration. Some of their biggest responsibilities include organising Freshers' Week, negotiating fair rent prices, and representing the JCR on various committees. And finally, what motivated me to run for president? Yeah, that's a tough one. Jokes aside, probably the biggest reason I'm running for president is that I'll be able to make a genuine difference on issues that I and many other students care about. If you're familiar with what I produce on this channel, you'll know that access and outreach at Oxford is a subject very close to my heart. I personally benefited hugely from access schemes like the Unique Summer School, so I want to pass that benefit on to future students. Reducing the environmental impact of college is another part of the presidential role which I feel very passionate about. For example, after lobbying from their JCRs, various Oxford colleges have divested their funds from fossil fuels, which is a major step in cutting their carbon emissions. And lastly, if you'll allow me some self-indulgence, I think I could do a really good job at the role. I've got plenty of experience with public speaking, I love to make changes for the better, and would really enjoy working with other students to achieve common goals. And at the end of the day, I think it would be a really memorable experience if I did get it. So after much deliberation and one or two restless nights, I resolved to run for president. Then, like any good strategist would, I devised a plan. Before I started planning the exact details, I virtually met with our current JCR president to discuss his thoughts on the role. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage of this, but it was a really important first step. During our insightful meeting, he told me about the regular responsibilities of the role, the challenges that came with it, and perhaps most importantly for now, the election process. Every college runs their JCR elections slightly differently. At mine, there is an overall ban on campaigning, with the exception of the official hustings events, where candidates can present their manifestos and try to convince other attendees to vote for them. The current president also told me there would be some unusual quirks in the election process, which I still don't know about at time of recording, but I'm sure we'll find out about eventually. After that meeting, I began searching for ideas for my manifesto. This was something I wanted to be really compelling. In the unlikely event I was going to become president, I wanted it to be because people believed in my platform, rather than I just so happened to be the most popular person amongst the candidates running. So I did some thinking. So let's try and come up with some manifesto ideas. Ooh, here's a nice one. Nowadays, some electricity companies can provide 100% renewable energy to their customers. I could perhaps lobby college to change supplier to one of those companies. That would be good for our environmental impact, would help cut our carbon emissions, but also college might get some positive publicity out of it. Sounds like a win-win to me. And Freshers' Week. Well, a few more in-person events for all the students who missed out in 2020 would be a good start. Heard the term refreshers used before? I quite like that. Nice pun. Although people might not be so sure about putting the Freshers' Week social calendar in the hands of an engineer. It's a risk we shall have to take. Right, that's a few pledges roughed out. Feeling quite happy with that. And thus I produced a manifesto. Pretty snazzy if I do say so myself. And finally, I outlined a short speech for the hustings based on what I promised in my manifesto. This may seem a bit excessive, which it is admittedly. However, I wanted the majority of my preparation done well in advance so that I could totally focus on my studies towards the end of the vacation. Running for president is frankly way more exciting than revising for my exams, so it is a bit of a distraction. Sorry not sorry, engineering department. And so, the curtain came down on Act 1 of my run for president. I was in a good position, and now had to wait until term got started. As I imagine you can tell from the change in background, I am now back in Oxford. There was a JCR meeting last night which I attended, and they mentioned that we should get our manifestos submitted basically as soon as possible, so that's what I've done tonight. Sending off the manifesto was surprisingly nerve-wracking, to be honest. Whilst I'm really proud of how it looks and the promises in there, I still don't quite know how the rest of the students are going to react, so we'll have to wait until the hustings to see. And whilst we're on the subject of hustings, it turns out that the presidential hustings will be slightly earlier than I expected, and will probably be at the end of this week instead of the week after, like I originally thought. That is a bit nerve-wracking, to be honest, but equally, I'm feeling quite confident. I hope I can get in there and make a good impression, and hopefully convince a fair few people to vote for me. JCR President and the Vice President positions can be quite in demand, so that does lead to usually quite a bit of competition over who it's going to be. Admittedly, this isn't always what happens. Last year, our current JCR President ran for the role unopposed, as the other candidate pulled out at the last minute. So I'm not very confident in this, but I think including myself, about 4 people will likely run for president, although I have no idea who else, and to be honest, that is mostly a guess based on hearsay. I still don't know any more about the secret quirks of the election process, but I think it'll be likely a few days' time before we see them come into action. That concludes this little update. It's not long now until the really exciting bit of the election process gets started, and you folks will be with me every step of the way. So, at long last, it is the day of the JCR presidential hustings themselves. To be brutally honest, I did not sleep particularly well last night because I kept going over and over in my head all the things I need to discuss at the hustings today, what general points I want to bring out from my manifesto, the ways I want to come across to people, all that kind of stuff. Last night was when the competition really began. We were sent out the agenda for the JCR meeting in which the hustings are going to be happening, and also sent all the candidate manifestos. So last time I was talking to camera, I said that I was expecting about 4 people to run for JCR President, which would have been quite a bumper crop, to be honest. However, it seems that that number has now dropped to 2. It is just me and 1 other competitor. Turns out I quite wildly overestimated. I am kind of happy that only 2 people are running compared to the 4 that I was expecting. If anything, sheerly from a probability standpoint, there is now a better chance of me getting in. Shortly after the manifestos came out, I also learned what the unexpected twist in our campaign was going to be. We were tasked with making a TikTok that is somehow related to our college. Now, this was not the ideal thing for me, since I have literally never used TikTok before in my life. I've watched a few on Twitter, but I have never made one myself. So I'm going to have to learn how to make TikToks in the space of a single morning. However, I have come up with an idea that relates to one of UNIV's most famous students, Percy Shelley. Once I finish it, I'm going to put the TikTok here in the video. Enjoy whatever kind of a mess that turns out to be.
If you're feeling like you need a little bit of company, you met me at the perfect time. You want me, I want you, baby.
By the way, the full-time Oxcentric TikTok is coming never. It's never going to happen. I am staying on YouTube. So I think that's the main points. Really, I just have to make sure that I am feeling as confident as possible going into the hustings, that I know my manifesto inside out, and that I get my TikTok sent on time. After spending the morning making my TikTok and the afternoon singing with choir, it was finally time for the hustings to begin. Okay, 5 minutes off the start of the meeting, quite nervous, but I feel like I'm as prepared as I can be. Let's do this. The hustings took place over Zoom, as all our JCR meetings have this year. They began with both candidates giving an up to 3-minute speech trying to convince the attendees why they would be the better president. Then, after we both made our pitches, our returning officer took various questions from the meeting attendees. Here's a couple of my responses. For me, I think the role of JCR President is a student representative. It's all about, obviously, as JCR President, you can have your own goals, but your job is to understand what student body's needs are and to help communicate that to college and people who wield a bit more power than you do in terms of the grander scheme of UNIV. So it's about talking to people, it's about being the eyes on the inside, so to speak, and getting a diverse range of opinions from all years at UNIV to help make the college make better decisions. I project managed on Young Enterprise. That was a very interesting experience. We had a variety of skill levels, and the expectations I want to set out is primarily basically being decent human beings to each other. Treating everyone else with respect has to be a key component, and also productivity, making sure that we are all working together to get our jobs done and not just feeling content to coast, in a sense. After about 45 minutes of speeches and questioning, the hustings were done. Still riding high on the adrenaline rush, here was my immediate reaction afterwards. I feel like I'm very happy with my performance there, and that's rare that you hear me say that. The voting for that will now be open for a couple of days, so I won't know anything probably until next weekend, maybe even the next JCR meeting next Sunday. But I will let you folks know when I hear anything. I'm not ashamed to admit I enjoyed that. Today, it is precisely 1 week since hustings and the final day of voting for the UNIV JCR presidential election. This past week has been exceptionally busy. I've had ambassador training, a mock exam, and an extra problem sheet compared to usual, amongst several other things, so I have just not stopped. Now the dust has settled and my adrenaline levels have returned to somewhat near normal, I feel I can give a much more level-headed analysis of my hustings performance. Overall, I'm still really pleased with how it all went. I feel I came across very well, my opening speech went smoothly, and I think I gave strong answers to the audience questions, even if some of my responses were a little meandering. After hustings, I received some lovely messages congratulating me on my performance from both some of my close friends at college and some students that I've never met before in person. So big shout out to them. Thank you all very much, that did mean a lot to me. On the first day of polls being open, I went and did my democratic duty and voted for myself. I mean, what were you expecting? It's not like I'm going to vote to reopen nominations after putting this much effort in. Let's turn to the big question. Who's going to win? My honest answer? I really don't know. This could go either way. If I were to sum up how I feel about the election overall, I'd say I feel cautiously optimistic. I think I couldn't have put much more effort in and made a very strong showing all in all, but equally JCR elections are really unpredictable. Hustings has probably been the most important part so far. Several attendees told me they thought that I put on the better show, but equally I'm sure that several other attendees will have said the exact same thing to my rival, so it's hard to deduce who's going to benefit most from that. At this point I have no option but to sit back and let democracy do its work. Whoever wins, the position of JCR President is going to be filled by a competent and enthusiastic candidate, and that's what matters at the end of the day. Polls will close at midnight on the day that I'm filming this segment. After that, it should hopefully be only 1 or 2 days until we know the result. Fingers crossed, it's what we're hoping for. Okay, it's midday on Monday morning. It's been a bit of a hectic day with work. However, I've just seen that the JCR election results have come through and I'm going to react to them live. I'm extremely nervous, but we're going to find out right now. Ooh, we smashed it! Not even close! We did it! We won! I'm JCR President, baby! I'm over the moon with that. I'm absolutely chuffed. I've got a lot of thinking to do about how I'm going to manage this workload with my degree already, but that is something that I can now start to consider and start to make progress on. This is definitely now a day of celebration. Then, like any self-respecting president-elect would, I use my win as an excuse to go and get pizza.
Bon apple teeth.
Everybody, cheers! Hey! Celebrations complete, I went to bed full of optimism and excitement. It has now been a day since I got the results of the JCR presidential election, and I'm still absolutely thrilled. I got 57% of the vote from just over 110 people voting, which I think is a pretty standard turnout for JCR presidential elections. The response to the news has been absolutely humbling for me. It's been fantastic to receive so much positive energy from people at my college and beyond. On the off chance they're watching, I'd like to congratulate my rival on a campaign well fought. You can trust that I'm going to be a steady hand at the helm of the JCR. I understand completely that being JCR president is a big role with big responsibilities. However, I'm really excited to get stuck in, face the challenges, and start making positive changes in my college community. On that note, I'd like to thank you all for coming on this journey with me. This video has been a huge undertaking, but I really hope you've enjoyed it. If there's anything to take away from this, it's that getting involved in student democracy is easier than it seems, and you can make a real difference. In the meanwhile, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you around. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content. Find someone who looks at you the way I look at doing anything that is not my degree.